I'm gonna get back to let's get ready to rumble. All right, we're about to do a showdown between Agile and Agile microdosing, moderated by my man Doc. Y'all get ready for some pretty cool stuff that's about to go down, and we'll open up for questions. But listen, thank you all for the support. We appreciate you, each and every one of you, and you're all fucking amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, you got microphone?
Thank all of you all for coming out tonight. Could be anywhere in the world, but chose to be here with us, so we appreciate it. And tonight we have a very exciting conversation about Agile. As a founder, I was interested when Chase reached out to moderate this because mostly because as a founder, talking to my dev team, I would sit in on sprints, I would have my stand-ups, then when my CTO came and said, hey, we need to be more flexible and use Agile, and I'm like, who is that? And it didn't really do that. But then as we kept going through the process and I could see some of the value there, I was kind of bought in, but still, I'm like, what the hell is going on, And so tonight I'm glad to be with Chris and with Jeff, and we're gonna see, Agile microdosing versus Agile, and what does that mean for software development, but also project management, and at some point, successful companies and businesses, So we'll start there. I'll turn over to you first, Jeff. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then, what's your stance, in general about Agile and Agile microdosing.
Okay, well, I'm a software developer and IT consultant here in Birmingham. Been working in Birmingham building software applications for a long time. So my stance on this, so Chris, I know you're a big proponent of Scrum. You've kind of worked with the Scrum royalty, Jeff Sutherland and those folks. I think Scrum is really dumb, Chris.
Usually when I see someone say Scrum is dumb, it's because they don't understand it.
Well, I think I understand it, but I think stand-ups are dumb. I think they're condescending and a waste of time.
Fair enough. I think Jeff would probably agree with you there, but also, coming up with a plan for the day, figuring out what you're going to get done and coordinating with the team seems like something that most teams might need to do on a regular basis. And Scrum has a framework to do that.
Yes, that's true. It does. I can see you're going to be a formidable opponent. You're not going to go down easy, are you?
It's going to be fine.
No, I think instead of stand-ups, what we need to do is we need to leave the developers the heck alone so they can think and actually get something done for days at a time.
Developers like to say that they don't have time for that, and it's ridiculous. They don't have time. They don't have time to get together and figure out are they on the right path. Most of the time, they're going to write code that sucks. That doesn't actually solve human problems. You need to spend time to coordinate, get together, understand what you're building. Sports teams have their huddles, have the opportunity to get together to figure out what they're doing so that there's a plan. That's what the building problem is. And actually, it's not standard anymore because you learned that even the idea of standing up is a little bit rude because not everyone on the team might be able to stand, so we evolve. One of my most frustrating things to hear in interviews when someone starts talking about, my stand-up means they haven't actually kept up with the Scrum guide. They don't know what it says because it sounds like it's Scrum.
So what I'm hearing is I should give my team football jerseys, and the scope is the play that we have, for the game.
Well, it'd be rugby jerseys.
Okay, that's fine.
A little more violent than American football.
Yeah. We like that.
Something I'm not big about to play.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have a
My
question.
phone's not being broken.
Okay, I have a question. I think it's pretty good. The Agile Manifesto. I think is that what you have over here?
I do.
Okay. It was written in 2001.
Correct.
And now, the world has changed. And the question is, if Agile were a person, what midlife crisis is it having?
Oh man, what a great question. Agile in general, Scrum is a subset of Agile. The modern industrial complex that makes up Agile and Scrum is a subset, it's just too full of itself. It's too uptight. It's, there's too much collaboration. There's too much documentation. There's too much input. Programming is a very creative process, and it takes a lot of time to get the problem loaded into your head and to be able to come up with a solution and be able to get that solution translated into code. And sometimes that takes days of uninterrupted work. And you know, just the over collaboration and the daily stand-ups and all, it's all very disruptive to the process. So I think to paraphrase Robin Williams from Good Morning Vietnam, I think Scrum is in more dire need of a rework job than any process on earth.
Okay.
Well, and funny enough, I've heard Jeff say, you would totally agree with that. The number one enemy of Scrum, say if there's an enemy of Scrum, it's not waterfall, it's not traditional management, it's shitty Scrum. I've heard him say that, and it really is. It's what Scrum says, you take 15 minutes a day. If a developer or team can't take 15 minutes to come up with a plan for the day, they're shitting themselves. Absolutely you can. You can take 15 minutes to come together, agree on what's gonna get done, make sure that nothing is aligned, that if some problems that come up, you can take 15 minutes to do that. Where do you see most problems, and the reason people are saying Scrum is dead, and frankly, I end up agreeing Scrum is dead, Agile is dead. It's not Scrum itself, it's not the Scrum guy that's dead, it's the overpaid, overpriced consultants that think they know what they're doing, they're trying to make $200-300 an hour coming in, telling people what to go do, and then leaving with companies that are falling apart because they put all of this process. And all they've done is taken things that consultants have been doing for years, things like the Accenture development model, ADM, it's been turned into this thing. All they're doing is taking that same bullshit framework, calling it Agile, slapping it on, leaving Jira behind the covers, and it is doing things. Scrum itself is extremely lightweight. It's three numbers, 3, a 5, and a 3. It's 3 roles, accountabilities, things that need to be done. It's 5 events that you do that are all common sense kind of events, and it's 3 artifacts. If you're doing anything other than that, Jeff will tell you you're not doing Scrum, and you're probably the reason Scrum is done.
So what are some ways if these teams are using, Agile and Scrum framework, and they're taking only 15 minutes, to have this thing up, the sprints are going from 2 weeks to 4 weeks. What are some ways to get back, to traditional Agile, if that's what's necessary to do this?
First of all, I think 4 and 6 week sprints are way too long. Starting with shorter is better. One of the core concepts, kind of in agility in general, makes sense. Small chunks of work. The smaller you can make the plan, the smaller you can make a unit of work, the more likely we are to actually be able to solve the problem and get it done. So I love 1 week sprints. My planning might take 5 to 10 minutes at most to come up with a plan for that sprint. If I'm doing a 4 week sprint, I'm going to take longer.
You like a superstar.
Do what?
See, you like a superstar. So you can.
I mean, I have to be, given who I work with. I work with teams all over the world that are new and are doing this kind of thing day in and day out. And so it's just a matter of focusing on the things that actually matter. And actually, probably what we're about Agile microdosing is getting to at the end of the day.
Right. Yes, to your point, Jeff, if it's kind of falling apart or, things are not working out as expected, what's the answer? Do we try to, microdose? How do we fix it?
Yeah, the number one answer is that we have to put people over processes. That's the core thing. That's the first element in the Agile Manifesto. And that's what's wrong with Scrum and the Agile industry today, is that they have elevated process over individuals again. So it really is that simple. So in the Agile Manifesto, they said process and people are both important, but people are more important than process. And when you elevate process over people, then, all kinds of bad things happen. And that's really what it has come down to.
Right.
Yeah, so I think that people over process is totally agree with you there. It's focusing. Now, it's not in place of process. There is a place for process. And the way the Agile Manifesto is written in the core values, it's a refocusing of what's important. People over process. Yes, you have process. Focus on people. It's responding to changes. Change is coming up, so embracing change over coming up with a plan. It's working product. Actually go build something and don't just document it. It's not in place of. You do those things, and they're important, but finding balance and refocusing on what's the most important thing. But at the end of the day, you have to manifest a bunch of old white guys getting together with cigarettes and beer, trying to figure out how a few groups and teams are doing way better than others. And the others that they were looking at the time were your traditional project managers with the white shirts and, white buttons and shirts coming from out here and like saying, this is how you do things. And some of them were doing it different. They were throwing out those playbooks. And that's really where Agile started. I think where it went sideways is when those white guys in white button-down shirts decided to get back together and take the Agile manifesto, take Scrum and make it into something that it was never intended to be. This big, heavy bullshit that no one likes doing, everyone hates. And they've lost the actual point.
Yeah, so the irony is that Scrum and Agile have become a parody of the very thing they were supposed to fix. They have become as bad and bureaucratic and burdensome and everything as the waterfall process were before them.
Yeah, and all comes in today, people making a shed ton of money.
Yeah.
As consultants going in, telling people what to go do instead of actually focusing on, well, it's two sides. You got the people that go in and tell you what to do, they bring you good playbooks, they give guides, and Jira into something, and make sure you put all your right things in all the right places in your Jira ticket. I had a student try to tell me all this stuff the other day, I'd be like, put her away from her damn Jira tickets. But they were all that big, heavy, lightweight things. Or on the other side, kind of this West Coast, you need to be agile, not do agile. What the fuck does that mean? Absolutely nothing at the end of the day. Like, you need to focus on telling people how to actually solve human problems and do it with the least amount of bureaucracy you possibly can. Not zero bureaucracy, but the least amount to make things better. And that's really the heart of it. That's why I absolutely love that. And people that do that right, work with John Deere, where I met Jeff Sullivan working at John Deere, one of the world's largest agile transformations of the time. This was during the middle of the pandemic, their stock price doubled and outperformed. It went from number 3 on the market to the number 1 player in the market in what they were doing. And their CEO and chairman of the board directly focuses not Scrum, although they were doing Scrum really by the book. They were Jeff Sullivan teaching them how to do that. They focus on the business agility, the ability to respond to a plan. And during the pandemic, talk about everyone's plan got thrown into the, thrown away, and they have to come up with totally new ways of doing business. Their agility allowed them to do that. And that's really where Agile is getting what Agile empowers teams to do.
I think it's like every profession, it's not the arrow, it's the warrior, right? And so you were on that project and y'all were successful doing that transformation, but the way the industry as a whole approaches it and the consultants and the process and everything and putting that over people is abject, failure most of the time.
If you were, let's say you were a consultant, you were you were hired to, help a team kind of transform, what they're doing, what they're doing. Is your first instinct to kind of start with Agile and then see how you can get creative and help their team perform better, or?
Well, I think you have to start with people. So, in fact, I'm going to talk about a few people. So I'm working on a team right now, a team that Chase built for us. And we have very sophisticated processes now. We've been doing it about a year, but we didn't start out that way. We started out with the people on the team and we let all that evolve. So the first person that was brought to us was Adrian. Adrian, you can raise your hand if you want to. Adrian Thomas. He, fantastic programmer, kind of a full stack developer, super dependable, just solid as a rock, cranks it out every day. And he came on, and instead of throwing a bunch of process at him, we said, here's the tool set, here's what we're trying to build, go try to build something. And within a week or two, he was able to bring some things back and never looked back. And so, and then he said, I've got this mentor that I worked with years ago who might want to join us at some point, and I didn't really think about it. When we got ready to hire somebody else, got with Chase, and Chase brought us Wes. And so Wesley Brand, who was actually Adrian's mentor, came on, and I was very careful because I didn't want to upset Adrian, and I didn't know what kind of politics they may have had in their past. But Adrian said, no, we love him. And so, Adrian comes on, he's a super, super solid, high level architect, the guy that will dig you out of a ditch, in the middle of the night. And then we brought on Mitch, and, we all had an interest in chess and all this sort of thing. So, but we built the process around the people. And so, for example, Wes is this high level of a guy I've ever worked with, but so is Darren Jennings, I think he's over here. And so, Darren's another one of these super high-level geniuses, but Wes will work late into the night. Darren's an early riser. Wes will check code in at 3 or 4 in the morning routinely. And Darren, I texted him about this the other day, he said he got started at 4:30 in the morning. So you have to build the process around the people. If we had a daily stand-up, let's say, if it's in the morning or in the afternoon, it's going to conflict with one of their schedules. And so, and Chase brought us all these people. Then Chase brings David Prestridge, who may be here tonight, brings him into the client. And we're led by Patrick Delaney, who's a CIO consultant here in Birmingham, absolute genius. He's a friend of Matt McKenzie's at Alloy. We met him through there. So the people really matter. And the process doesn't matter as much. Yes, you have to have some process, but it's not as important as the boots on the ground. So, and Chase has understood this forever. I've known Chase for 30 years. I have not understood this forever. I'm coming to this late in life, like I do a lot of things. A lot of people, maybe some people in this room, had the unfortunate of having to work with me before I understood this stuff. But Chase I wrote it down, but he's a founder of iTac. He's not paying me to say all this stuff, by the way. But he founds iTac, then he starts IT Rockstars, which is all about building the individual. Then Moxie, Fetch, now Deploy, and that's where it starts. So the idea of Agile microdosing is we've got this entire palette of tools in Agile that is way bigger than Scrum. I mean, you've got Kanban, you've got all these other great tools. Right. And what we advocate is the same thing that the founders of the authors of the Agile Manifesto said, is that you have to build the processes around the team. And so what we're saying with Agile microdosing is use the entire palette, and then whatever works for any given team, bring it in very small doses. And build a team, build a process, and let it evolve. So they use the term of barely sufficient methodology, and that's what we're getting toward. Although it will evolve to a very sophisticated process like we have, under Patrick's leadership. So that's where I would start with the people.
Okay. So what substitutes your the stand-up? Like, what is your company's version of that? The one-on-one or?
Well. I'm a programmer, have been for a long time, and I know the way I build applications, I really have to think about it hard for a long time, and then you have all kind of issues you have to deal with, and you gotta, then you get pulled away for family things, and I will literally go 2-3 days working on a project and not write a single line of code that's meaningful because I can't get to my computer, and then I'll sit down for 2 hours and produce more code than somebody else might do in a week. It's just that's the way human beings work. And so this idea of a stand-up, is just very disruptive to the way programmers typically think and work in the most effective way, in my opinion.
That's interesting and effective at a single team. When I have a small group, a small company, giving the flexibility, and we're all about giving as much flexibility. It's the idea of empowered team members. It's also like that not every person wants to be empowered. I've had lots of people that ultimately don't want to be empowered. They want someone else to make a decision and tell them what to do. Personally, I don't want to work with those people, but there are human beings that are like that. On the other side, being empowered doesn't mean you're all powerful. So if you have a large organization, a John Deere, insert, huge, and not even doesn't have to be the size of like tens of thousands of employees. If you have 100 people, with 10 teams, all doing and speaking different languages, writing code in a different way, going in a different direction, trying to coordinate that and align a large organization when everyone's doing their own thing can be very difficult. Not impossible, but definitely you're going to add a lot of overhead that can be very inefficient. One of the nice things about having a playbook of any flavor, it doesn't really matter what it is, Scrum, Kanban, to really the only 2 processes other than let's go make up our thing. Those are the 2 main ones, for sure. And the 2 main ones that were represented at the Agile Manifesto. Stream programming was the only other one that had any representation there. But when you have a pattern, everyone begins to kind of play by that same playbook, then you can much quicker align a large organization with lots of teams, tens, hundreds, thousands of teams. And the value behind that is huge. It might not be the best way to do it, and there's absolutely things that aren't efficient, but more than two people working together, by its nature, becomes inefficient. Hundreds, thousands becomes extremely inefficient. We've got to do something to start with somewhere, which is the benefit of why companies are saying, hey, this is our playbook. This is the kind, if I'm going to, University of Alabama, I'm going to play football the way that the coach says we're going to play. I go to Auburn, it's going to be different. If I go to a different school, it's going to be playing like someone tells me to go do, and there's a reason that we do that. Because it does create opportunities for process efficiency, for improving. Versus, every developer thinks they're a special snowflake, every team on the face of the planet thinks they're a special snowflake, that their problems are unique to them, and as a coach, I get to embrace those special snowflakes, and meet them where they are, and eventually help them learn, much like it sounds like you do in Agile microdose. You've got this palette of solutions, of patterns that work. We just try to accelerate that by saying, hey, we're gonna follow these set patterns, and here are the things you can, if you don't have to do your daily scrum at 8 in the morning or at 8 in the evening, do what works for your team. But team, you're going to align for some period every single day to make sure that you're building the right stuff. You're going to align once in some set of iterations to align and agree on what you're going to do. You're going to show us your work on a regular basis so we can make sure you're building the right thing and getting feedback on it. Frankly, the faster you get feedback, that's why we do 1 week sprints, and we release every single week. We have build notes on our stuff every single week we go out there, so we can get feedback and make sure we're building the right thing, which is vital. And Scrum gives us a framework to do that.
Okay, it sounds like it sounds like you're more art and you're more science, in your approach, so to speak. But where do you draw the line? Like, how do you know that, okay, this is the way we should approach this versus another?
Well, I just think that that programming is both art and science, and the art has been squeezed out of the process in a lot of ways because of this emphasis on process and the science of it all. There's not as much room left for the creativity that has to come into any complex project like that.
So I wrote my first line of code in 3rd grade, so I've been writing code for a while. And usually when I hear programmers say they're artists, it's because they're at the point of they don't know how they're going to solve the problem. I might dislike Donald Trump, but one of the things he said is, I have an idea or a concept of a plan. And that was the most developer thing I think I've ever heard anyone say outside of development. I have a concept. I don't know exactly how I'm going to solve it, but ultimately, that could feel like art. I'm being creative and coming up with something funny, but hopefully we're using engineering tools that have engineering processes to solve, and we're solving problems that actually have usually a clear right and wrong. I've either solved it or I've not solved it, and that's one of the things I love about programming, is usually you're right or wrong, you write a test around it, it's great. I like, most of life is not black and white, you're living in the gray, well, coding is usually not. You do get to figure it out. But just because it feels when you're navigating with this kind of workings doesn't necessarily mean it's the same thing as being an artist. Maybe not. I don't think I'm too formal about it, but hopefully.
I've got a little demo I want to do to illustrate this.
I did not bring a guitar.
I'm here for it.
Daniel, did I do this as a slide? Okay, good. Did we lose this since Jim? Oh.
Scientist here.
Yeah. So I'm not a virtuoso guitarist like Jim is, but I just want to show you this real quick. So the science part of playing a guitar or any musical instrument comes down to music theory. So music theory is about scales and chords and intervals and all those sorts of things. So I don't know if you can hear me very well. All right, so this is a scale in the key of A. So that's do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? All right, and so if I go down a fret, it's the same thing. This is in A sharp. So musical scales are all about intervals, like the distance between the frequency of these notes. And chords are made up of like the first and the third and the fifth in a scale, something like that. And I may not get all this exactly right. And these frequencies are broken up into half steps and whole steps. It's the distance between the notes. So a major scale is whole step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So this is music theory. This is science. So we're talking about the difference between art and science, right? So the science part of music is fascinating. It goes all the way back to Pythagoras. You remember Pythagoras from geometry. He's the one who came up with these notes and these scales and all this stuff. And it's a kind of a black hole. You can study it forever and ever and ever, and it's fascinating. All right, but watch this. So this is the scale. All right, I'm gonna play those exact same notes backwards with just a little bit of rhythm. And watch this. Did you hear that? So y'all know what that is? Joy to the World, right?
Yes.
Here we are at Christmas. So Joy to the World, that's the most sold Christmas song in the history of the world. And that tune goes back to George Handel. And that's art. And so my point here is that the difference between art and science is so subtle. Joy to the World is the exact same notes played backwards. But the difference in the outcome couldn't be greater. And so if you're doing software projects and they come out sounding like a scale, there's not enough art in your software project. You need George Handel and Pythagoras in your software project. And art and creativity requires time to think and time to process and be creative. And so the difference between art and science is very, very subtle in the beginning, but the ramifications of it are huge. And that's what we're missing in software development and modern Scrum and Agile. There's not enough room for that anymore.
Chris, I don't know if you got a sex phone in your shoe for the next question for you. When I want to talk about rhythmic. You started up and
It's appropriate that we just had music theory, and now we're gonna talk about rhythm.
there we go.
Yeah.
Perfect way.
Yeah, so rhythmic is really kind of taking that idea of moving away from Agile. Agile is all about, well, honestly, Agile is kind of back brand. Building the brand through. Rhythmic is all about building the doing things, of taking that kind of emotion, and at its core, focusing on what can it do if we take AI to work alongside first the product managers. So what Rhythmic is doing is, well, what GitHub Copilot and Codium and all of these AI coding assistants do for software developers, we're doing for product people. We're applying a little bit of science of what is traditionally a very artistic approach. Product coming up with the next thing to go build, leading your team, accepting a lot of kind of rigor. Now we're adding the ability to be more flexible. So what Rhythmic does is allows you to take an idea and turn it into a validated product in minutes instead of hours or days or years. Yesterday I did 2 demos. One was with the United Nations, the other was with a large Fortune 50 computer manufacturer. The first one, I had the system within minutes build a product plan to build a refugee camp.
Wow.
And it came up with some really cool ideas, such as ways to help the refugees actually in the camp create a valid, valuable way of living while they're looking to transition to something better. The person in the United Nations like, this is a really cool idea. And it built a plan, something that they would take, they said days to come up with just the basic high level stuff, it did in minutes. Then turned around, the same system worked with this computer manufacturer and came up with a plan to build an advanced AI algorithm inside a large storage system and coming up with the user interfaces and the works and the things that needed. And again, it was also coming up with some unique ideas that the team had never looked at before, and that's kind of what we're building. And it has been a lot of fun to take all of the rigor of agility, the process, and actually making it easier for people to be very fast at coming up with lots of ideas.
Okay, awesome. What's one of the biggest revelations you've had working with AI and building different? Like what's something that was like?
So Scrum, so in the 90s, we have Scrum kind of the process. You have Kanban, you have all these people. In 2000, it turned into the Agile Manifesto, which is really philosophical. And within kind of 2000 where we are today, the world's largest companies are using Scrum. The world's most successful teams are using Scrum and Agile. And it blew up. It became this big, you described it as kind of the Agile industrial complex, where lots of money has been made. Lots of obscene amounts of money have been made. Well, that is going through I think rightfully so, going through an implosion and collapsing. AI is kind of that next thing. I think we're at just the start of it. In the last couple of years, we've seen some huge steps, but we're really at the point where Agile blew up in the 2000s to where we are today. The next 10, 20, 30 years are going to accelerate faster than we ever could possibly imagine. When you can create a AI that iterates through hundreds of ideas in minutes and hours instead of days and comes up with the most efficient projects to build, and it's right, what that's going to do for startups who are trying to validate their idea, trying to come up with the next thing to build, or the large, huge companies that are trying to do the same thing and trying to act like a startup. I don't think we truly understand how the world's going to change as AI progresses. And even if it doesn't get any smarter than it is right now, so I don't believe it's the case. We're going to see better ways of iterating what
Yes. Okay, got to keep you, Daniel. You're ready to wrap it up, but I got one more question for both of you. And I'll say, what is one big misconception in which more people understood about Agile? I'll let you go first.
A big misconception about Agile? Okay, I'm gonna use another prompt. All right, so this chart, thank you. This chart,
That's the most agile consultant thing I've seen.
all right, so this chart comes from a book called Navigating Complexity. The original authors of the Agile Manifesto really understood complexity theory on a deep level. And if you really understand complexity theory and you really understand the Agile Manifesto, it explains a lot of things. But this is a critical diagram in the study of complexity theory. So this is called the edge of chaos. And what this says is that all complex adaptive systems, people, organizations, go through this predictable cycle. And so the cycle is the organization or the person starts out real inward looking and kind of, I'm getting to your question, kind of hedgehog and conservative and inward looking. And then it starts interacting with its environment and things become progressively more complex, but there's still order to it. And so the organism or the organization or the individual starts really, kind of feeling their oats and things are going really well. And then things start really clicking and they're clicking on all cylinders. And that's right here in the cycle. That's what they call the edge of chaos. And what happens after this is that things become too expansive and too complicated and it degenerates literally into chaos. And that causes the organism to be inward looking and get conservative again. Now, this is true for all human beings since the beginning of time. If I had everyone in here come up here, stand on the stage and jump off with me, we would all hit the floor because our bodies respond to laws of Newtonian physics. But as human beings, we respond to these kinds of laws. And so how does this impact what we're talking about here? What this means is individuals on your team and your client and everybody else are going through this all the time. And so you have to be cognizant of where people are in this cycle at all times. So, we've all been here before and everything's hitting all cylinders and we're just going to solve all the problems and everything's great. Well, you have to know that it's going to devolve into chaos after that. And it's nobody's fault. It's just what happens. And so when you get here, you don't quit, you don't fire people, you don't reevaluate your life, you get through it. And you come back here and then you do it again. This is what all people do. All people go through this. These rigid processes don't take this into consideration. These rigid processes make it sound like we can all just write our software, do our stand-up and check off our story points and, just keep doing it. That's not really how it works. So this, I think, is the biggest misconception. This is a law of nature that guides all of us and always will. I wrote a book about it. There's a ton of free copies up here. Yeah, these normally are $47 a piece, but tonight they're free. So grab you one of these. Anyway.
What's the name of it? I thought the name of it was.
Yeah, it's 10 ways to stop buying books like this. So come get you one.
This is great. The thanks today, Joe. Chris, I need you to post down about
So the one misconception most people would understand is that if you feel your process is overweight, it is too rigid, then you're not actually doing Scrum. You're not actually doing Agile. It is meant to be very lightweight and very focused on, the Agile talk is focused on basically human biology and physics. He built a system that focuses on those two very, like how do humans work together? What does science actually say about it? Things like your complex adaptive theory and all of these things. It shouldn't be that hard. I wish people would take a deep breath, throw the terminology out the window and focus on just doing good work and working in ways that actually help human beings do more and solve more and solve more problems.
I think it's okay that we said we don't get some roadblocks. I think that's okay. It's fine. So, do we have time for questions?
So we have time for 2 questions, unless I get overruled. So stop booing me, Dennis. So who really wants their question answered?
Oh, we got Leverett over here.
I see Leverett first. All right, Leverett. Hang on. I'm gonna hand the microphone to my wife to hand it to Leverett. Leverett, you have to give it back.
Have you considered Scrumjile?
Wow.
Oh my
I like it.
We're trying
It's
to
better
get
than
out
logic.
by 8 o'clock, Tony.
So Darren introduced me to a great new phrase I'd never heard. He said they call it scrum butt. So it's scrum, but we do all this other stuff.
I call it fragile. So what about bolting things like safe or APM or flow? Like, what are your opinions of all the bolt-ons to Agile?
Yeah, so one, safe is garbage, safe is anything but Agile. But to get to the other things, Scrum is the starting point. The other things that you would add to it make sense. Do the least amount possible, which is why I hate safe, because safe is nothing but the least amount possible. It's so heavyweight. But also why safe laid off half of their team the other day. People are realizing it. But Dean Leffing all the way to bank to take a bunch of money off of it. At the end of the day, absolutely add things onto it. The team should be able to make decisions on what it needs to do, but do the least amount of that possible. Make sure it works and make sure it solves a human problem.
Awesome. Thank you. And I think with that, that's it. Thank you all for coming out. One more question or we're done?
We got one more
Oh, we
question.
got a hand.
We got one in back.
One more in the back.
I got it.
I'm up here, so I have to make.
I can speak loud enough, don't worry.
We want to make it louder though.
No.
Here, I got it.
Okay, so what I want to know is how would you market the Scrum?
So I think, Jeff.
Are you a plant? I actually, for all of the,
Qualify my question, because you talk about lightweight, and I've heard Jeff defend what he's talking about. I really haven't heard you defend Scrum yet. So I'm gonna put it to you, and taking his premise of microdosing, agile microdosing, how would you microdose Scrum in a small organization, in a large organization? How would you do it?
Yeah, so don't worry about the roles, don't worry about what you call them, don't worry about the events. I get a group of people together and say, all right, cool, I need you to come up with a list of problems you're gonna go solve. I don't care what that list looks like, what tool you put it in, everyone needs a list of what they're gonna do. Preferably focus on solving human problems, not building shit that no one wants. So I get them to put that list, all right, cool, what are you gonna get done this week? I get them to pull some product, the least amount of work they can get done during the week, that's what I'm gonna have them focus on. And then every day, cool, what are you gonna get done today? What's going wrong? Are you still on path, or is there anything we need to address as a team? And I go through the work. At the end of the sprint, show it to someone. Get feedback on it. Make sure that you built the right thing, that you actually solved that human problem, and then pick one thing you want to do to get better. I don't really care what you call it. Call it apples, bananas, and puppy dogs for all I care. At the end of the day, all you're doing there is Scrum. And doing some things that are actually very much common sense that very few people, when I put it to teams that way, disagree with.
no, I 100% agree with that. That is a perfect way to microdose Scrum. Unfortunately, that's not the way the industrial complex that's selling Scrum goes about it. But I think that's exactly, again, it's not the arrow, it's the warrior, and I think what he said there is exactly dead on. But my thing with Scrum is this. So Scrum was invented in the mid-90s by Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland, who he's actually worked with. He's actually co-written books with Jeff Sutherland. This guy's royalty of Agile. There is some value to it. But there is some value to it. But these guys came up with this in the mid-90s. Okay, that was before the internet. That's before cell phones. That's before texting. There was no such thing as the cloud, no such thing as virtual computers, no such thing as working remotely. There was, these guys are sitting around on green screens, programming COBOL and RPG and Fortran and that stuff. And, it's mostly men, and they're driving to work in buildings with suits and ties on and wearing skin bracer aftershave or, maybe Old Spice every now and then. They're drinking reheated Folgers coffee because there's no such thing as Starbucks or lattes or anything. And so what we're saying when we sell Scrum to the world is we're saying, okay, these guys sat under a tree. 30 years in IT is like 30,000 years in archaeology. So we're saying essentially these cavemen sat under a tree and were given the right one way to manage software on golden tablets one day, and despite all the differences in the way we do work and all of the intellect, all of the advancements, we can't do any better than what they came up with in 1995. And Scrum today looks exactly like it did when they invented it. They had Scrum Masters and stand-ups and all the rest of it. So it's about applying it correctly, and I agree 100% with what he just said. But the industrial complex, the way they're trying to sell it, just makes no sense.
I do want to iterate just a little bit on that. It does change. So the Scrum Guide does get updated every 3 years, and it looks very different. Actually, the first Scrum, there was no such thing as the review or retrospective. It was one event. Things like that. We called it the daily stand-up. We called them rituals. All of these things have evolved.
All that stuff was in 95 except for the retrospective, though.
Right, but so those are things that actually what we call them today are very different. It's not rituals anymore because that actually goes against, it's exactly what you're saying. Like, we don't need to do ritual things, we need to look at solving problems.
Yeah.
The tools that we've added on top of it, things like design theory and human AI. Actually, if you talk about Jeff, he's not going to talk about Scrum. He's going to talk about AI now and what AI is doing. So it has evolved. Most of the Agile industrial complex have not evolved.
Yeah.
We're getting the find as much evolved.
Thanks for your question.
We
Good question.
to home. Thank you all for coming out tonight.
Thank you for coming out, man. Let's give it up for Jeff Talley, my man Donald, and my man Chris. Let's give it up. All right? So just so y'all know, next week I've got 1,000 t-shirts coming out that says Scrum is scum. So if you want to buy them, you just let me know, I'm selling them. That's right. Anyway, listen, thank you guys for the support of the IT community, man. Love each one of you. You guys are fucking amazing. That's how we started this. You're still fucking amazing. Have a good night. Thank you all.
Thank you, Don.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Great. That was
Man, great to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you.
We got to get together and break it down.
Good job, fellas.
Oh, I thought so.
Peter O'Hare.
Hey, good to see you.
Yeah,
Good
you
to
need to
see
send
you.
him that order.
Are you the one that asked the question?
Yes.
Oh man, I wish I'd known that.